Hi, this is Dr. Gregory Sadler. I'm a professor of philosophy and the president and founder of an educational consulting company called Reason.io, where we put philosophy into practice. I've studied and taught philosophy for over 20 years, and I find that many people run into difficulties reading classic philosophical texts. Sometimes it's the way things are said or how the text is structured. But the concepts themselves are not always that complicated, and that's where I come in. To help students and lifelong learners, I've been producing longer lecture videos and posting them to YouTube. Many viewers say they find them useful. What you're currently watching is part of a new series of shorter videos, each of them focused on one core concept from an important philosophical text. I hope you find it useful as well. In Chapter 17 of his book, Reasons and Persons, which is called The Repugnant Conclusion, Derick Parfit is looking at human populations and quality of life and growth and problems that can arise from that. And he's going to begin by saying, how many people should there be? Can there be overpopulation? Too many people? And he says, we need an answer to these questions. And he says, in a complete moral theory, we can't avoid this question about how many people there should ever be. And he says, in what I'm going to look at here, I'm going to ask a smaller question. Now, a relatively smaller question, since it has to do with a very large population. How many people should there be in some country or the world during a certain period? When would there be too many people living in a given place and time? And so he's going to begin by considering a very common situation. He calls it the happy child, this scenario. And he says a couple are trying to decide whether to have another child. They can assume that if they did, they would love this child. The child's life would be worth living. So given the size of the world's population when this case occurs, this couple can assume having another child would not, on balance, be worse for other people. When they consider the effects on themselves, well, they have reasons for having another child, but they also have several other contrary reasons. For example, the effects on their careers. Like many others, this couple cannot decide between these two sets of conflicting reasons. They believe if they had this child, this would be neither better nor worse for them. And he says, does this couple have a moral reason to have this child? Would it be better if an extra life is lived that is worth living? That's what a lot of people would say. Yes, of course. Why not create another life? Other people might say, nah, it's not actually on the whole making things better for the totality of people. And so then he's going to shift here saying, my couple assume that the existence of an extra child would not be worse for other people. And in many countries, in many periods, this has been true for reasons we'll talk about in a bit. But maybe we're not at that point anymore. He says, this is not true. This is not, currently the case in many countries that if there had been more people, people would be worse off. Now, not massively worse off, having one single additional mouth to feed, a child to clothe, educate, perhaps, devote medical resources to is not going to destroy the entire system. But you have enough of them, and it seems like it, makes things worse for people overall, and we could say leads to a lesser quality of life. And he says those are the sorts of cases that I'm particularly interested in. So in those kinds of cases, population growth would affect existing people. And he says when it would lower the quality of life, we can think that population growth would be against the interests of existing people. But that's not always true. Why not? Well, this is where it gets a little bit more complicated. It says,
Even when it lowers the quality of life, population growth can be better for existing people. How? Well, if the population grows at a certain rate, this will have what he calls transitory good effects, but also cumulative bad effects. So the bad effects might be the steady decline in the share per person of available resources. We might think about non-renewable resources, or we might think that, just as the population gets bigger, even if we can recirculate air, well, there's less air, right? Or water, or even if we think about sunlight coming in, right? That's not going to change, and you got enough sunlight, provided we don't screw up cloud cover. There's less space for people to get that sunlight, right? So he says that, the transitory good effects might be economic ones. It could be the working of the country's economy. Rapid population growth might be bad for the economy, but a slow rate of growth might be better for the economy than no growth at all. And he says, there's technical reasons why for given economic systems this could actually be the case. So those are the sort of situations that he's considering at the start. And he talks about what he's going to call the down escalator case. And this is going to raise a problem. And it really has to do with the question of whether a given generation over time should decide for continued growth or for merely replacement. Don't grow the population, just keep it at a steady level. Notice that he doesn't talk about decline, having less people. He's just going to consider growth or replacement. So he's got a diagram there that we're not going to use, but you can easily find in his discussion. And the idea is that if there is growth rather than replacement, then you get transitory good effects. So even though, there's less resources overall, there's good economic effects, or perhaps social effects in certain ways as well. But they'd only last for 3 generations. So growth is a good strategy if you're in generation 1, 2, 3. But if you're in generation 4, it's no longer paying off. And if you're in the future generations and you keep on growing it, it gets worse and worse and worse, right? So that's a problem. And he says that, this makes this down escalator case kind of depressing. It might be better for most couples if they have more than 2 children, and this might be what most couples want to do. Since growth would be better for existing people in the next 2 generations, it's unlikely the community would decide on some policy that would shift from change to replacement. And then he says, maybe at the 4th generation, they would make a sort of rational shift. Maybe the best policy would be growth for the first 3 generations, followed by replacement. The community should switch to replacement once growth begins to produce a lower quality of life. At this point, growth ceases to be better for existing people. And since this is so, we can expect the community, as rational policy makers, to shift to replacement. But that's probably not going to happen, he says. Why? Consider the alternatives facing this 4th generation. If there has been growth in population and there have been these transitory good effects, he says, why is the quality of life still as high as it would have been if there had been replacement? Because of those transitory good effects, if the 4th generation switches to replacement, it's going to lose those good effects. Now, it's going to lose those good effects anyway, right? Because we said they're only going to work for 3 generations, but maybe they don't know that or understand that. And so their quality of life is going to drop in their generation. And he says if there continues to be replacement, the quality of life will be for the next 3 generations lower than it would have been if there had been population growth. So each generation, not just the fourth, but the fifth, the sixth, the seventh, are going to be faced with these alternatives. And he's going to say that it's going to look to each generation as if growth is the best thing for their generation, and they'll put off switching to replacement to the next generation. They can take the hit on that. And so what does this lead to? He calls it an intergenerational prisoner's dilemma. Now, the prisoner's dilemma is a problem in games theory where the two people, the prisoners, ought to cooperate with each other, but there's a bad payoff if one of them cooperates and the other one instead competes or betrays the other one. There's a bad payoff for the one who is betrayed. And so what it ends up leading to is both of them betraying or competing rather than cooperating, with a worse payoff for both of them as a result. So we could think about this in terms of the generations, Parfit is saying. And so this is going to cause a significant problem. He says that in the down escalator case, a certain rate of population growth will always be in the interests of existing people and their children, though it causes a continuous decline in the quality of life. This rate of growth will not be against the interests of those who live more than 3 generations later. Why? Because they will owe their existence to this rate of growth. And so this is not going to be a really great way to conceptualize it, not just because it leads to a prisoner's dilemma, but because it's going to be framed in terms of the wrong sorts of concepts. Now, before we end this, I would like to point out that the logic that Parfit is developing here in terms of population growth and the transitory good effects for 3 generations and the cumulative bad effects of resource depletion or some other things like that. We might think about environmental degradation. This could actually be applied to a number of other similar big picture decisions across the generations. So it doesn't just have to apply to that. Perhaps this logic or argument might have wider application than Parfit is giving it right here.